All right. So today we are going to learn a little bit about the next two slides, and this will finish out our slides. Slide 11 is our graph of our data, and I did go over this a little bit with your class, but we're going to do it again because it was confusing. And then the last slide is your conclusion. Okay, now I know that this is due in science on Monday, May 21st, so at least set up your page. If you do not, or your slide, if you do not have your conclusion finished, it's kind of your final thoughts on your entire project, you can wait until Monday to put it in, but I want you to be well prepared with the slide already done, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so you can do to graph your data, you can do two things. You can use this Create a Graph site, or you can use Google Spreadsheets. Now the Create a Graph site is, I posted it down here under the Science Fair slide orders. It is this site here that allows you to create your own graph based on the data that you have. You can also use spreadsheets to do this. So if I want to delete this one out, I've got a bunch of them on here. If I wanted to delete those out, what happens is you click and drag, click and drag and highlight what it is that you want a chart of. And there's two places. You can insert here a chart, or you also see here there's an insert chart. When you do that, it's going to pick the first one, but you have some options here to look at different charts that you might want, okay? You know, if a line graph is something that you think would be better, you could do that. If you think that you would like a chart that looks like this, you could change it up there. You also have some different options to, so this one is stack or not stack, so you definitely can stack them if you want them. So then it stacks them like that. I usually don't do that. This is your data range, so it's going from A1. So here's your A column, 1, to E, 4, okay? So that's number 4 there. So that's my data range. That's what it's looking for. My y-axis, that is going to be this one, is A1 through A4. Does that make sense? And my series, these are going to be all of these things here. So if I wanted to rename them, I could do that here also. You can also customize it. So you can go in here and customize, like I can make the background color look something different. So if I wanted a gray background color, I could do that. You could change the font to a different font if you wanted it to look different. You could 3D it. So if you wanted it to look like a 3D one, you could definitely do that. This is the title. I was mistaken before. This is where you could put your title. So if I wanted this to be a title of, oh, remind me what we are doing for this class. This is Lacrosse Science Fair Project. That's what we're going to use right now. So if I wanted to change this, I could make it my lacrosse and whatever I put here, that's what's going to show up here at the top. Okay, again, this is all to change the font of that. If I wanted bold, italics, centered, not centered, you can decide where you want that. The color of it, so if I wanted a different color, I could make it a different color. You have lots of different options here. Okay, then you have some series data labels. So if you want it to have like the data, like what the numbers actually are, you could add that. Okay, lots of different things that you can go. You can also create legends. So right now it's to the right. This is what is called a legend. You could change that position if you wanted it to be in a different position. You could also change what you want the font to look like in there. Here's your horizontal axis and your vertical axis. Those will give you some different options for changing that font. And then you have your grid lines, what you want them to look like. So lots of different options to customize it. Once you get in here, if you want to use this particular one, you would just copy it, Command C, And you could come over into your science fair presentation, and where we have our graph, you can just paste it. Oops, I did the whole thing. I got rid of the whole page. If we did our graph in here, you could just paste it in here, and it would paste that spreadsheet into here for you, or that graph into here for you. Okay? Now I know the graphs and the charts are really hard, right? They're hard to get down the numbers. So you need to make sure that as you are doing this, that you get your chart filled out first. You can either do a spreadsheet or you can do this other graph, which I'm going to show you right now. Okay? So this one is one option to get a graph in there. You need to have some sort of graph. Now our Create a Graph, this is a website that you can go to that will also create graphs for you. You have different types of graphs you can use. I like the bar one. You can decide what you want it to look like. So if I wanted it to be horizontal, you can tell it what shape you want them to be, what you want your background color to be. So if I wanted my background to be gray, these are my grid colors, grid lines, the appearance. You can change all of that. Here is where you would put like the title. So if we wanted to do lacrosse science fair, like I had on the other one, your x-axis, that's this direction. So right here it tells you. On that other graph we did on here, this was your Olivia Redleaf, Olivia Apple, Maite, that's what was on that one. So when you are in the graph, you could label that, and let's say, what do we want to label that? I can't remember. Who gave me that data? Keely, what would we label that? Okay. So if we labeled that seconds, and we labeled the other one trials, right? Okay. We then, over here, you also in your graph probably had 4 different options with 3 trials. So we would go back into here and you would have maybe trial number 1, trial number 2, trial number 3, and I only need 3 of them, so I can say I only need 3 for my items here, and it will get rid of the extras. Then I needed 4 up top, so I'm going to, this would be, and I can't remember what we had. We had Olivia Redleaf, Olivia Apple, so oops, be help if I could spell today. Olivia Redleaf, Olivia Apple. Who was the other person, Keely? Maite Redleaf and Maite Apple. Okay, and then we had our data in here, right? So if I went back over here and got this data, I'm gonna just put some random data in there. So let's say I did 15, 17, 16, and on the next one I did 23, 22, and 18. I'm just guessing numbers, guys, so remember this will be what you have for your data. And if it's confusing, I can tell you that probably the most important thing is that you keep them as numbers. And I'm going to give you some options there. So here I've got my information. You can then go to the next tab. This will give you what you want to label them. So this is just what you want it to look like and where you want it and the font. You can preview it then. So this is what it is going to look like when I am done. And if I like that one, I can download this as these different options. PDF, that's a portable document format, so that means everybody can see it. JPEG, that is the picture form of it. So we're going to do a JPEG. So I'm going to change this to a JPEG, and I'm going to download it. And you'll see that I get this Graph 5 JPEG. So now, if I go over to my Science Fair project and I want to pull that one in, I can go here to upload it from my computer, And I can go to my downloads and get that graph 5 and open it, and now I have this graph in here with all of my different labels. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, if you had something like this where you were putting true and false in here and false, okay, if you had something like this, you might want to create a legend in here, and instead of putting true and false, you want to give them a value because that will make it a lot easier to see. So 1 could be equal to true and 2 could be equal to false. So if you are coming up with some things where it's like words that you're using, you might want to use a legend that depicts numbers because the graphs are easier to see if you have numbers. Does that make sense? Then instead of putting true and false in here, you would put 1, and we would know 1 is true. Whoops, I thought I was in here. That 1 is true and 2 is false. Okay, because then you would have your legend here. All right, I'm going to